I'm just gonna pour it into the milk mixture without splashing myself too much. Okay, that happens all the time, actually. To get started, I have heavy whipping cream and I have butter. I use a mixture of both just to create an even better texture, and then when it sets up in the fridge, it really gets a nice firmness to it. But then at room temperature, it's nice and just silky and yummy. So anyway, I'm gonna throw this in the microwave for about a minute. You may need to stir it after 30 seconds. We want everything to be melted and for it to be nice and steamy hot. Milk is nice and steamy hot, the milk butter mixture. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna take some chocolate. Now you guys, you can use whatever chocolate you want. You can use milk, dark, white, whatever. And I'm gonna be using some dark chocolate here. And I'm just gonna pour it into the milk mixture without splashing myself too much. Okay, that happens all the time, actually. So here it is. And what you're gonna do is you're just gonna let it sit for about a minute. I will just kind of quick tilt it to get all the chocolate covered, but then we're gonna let it just sit for a minute and just let the chocolate melt. If you start stirring it, it's gonna start cooling the mixture down too soon. So just let it simmer, not really simmer, let it set for about a minute and then we'll mix it. I've brought you in closer so you can see what's happening. You guys can see the chocolate is all melted, and we're now gonna come in with a whisk and give it a stir. And a whisk really does work best because it can take a little bit of stirring to get the chocolate to actually start to mix with the liquid. But anyway, you guys can see it's starting to kind of look like a lumpy chocolate milk, and we'll just keep stirring. There we go. Okay. And we'll just keep gently stirring so we don't make a mess, because at first it'll kind of seem like it's not going to come together, and then as you stir it more and more, it's going to turn into a really pretty ganache. Now, you're going to stir it, and then if you see lumps, like right now I can see some like chocolate chips still in there, then I'm going to have to pop it in the microwave. But I would just say like give it time, because sometimes if I let it set here for about a minute and give it another stir, there's enough internal heat that it will melt on its own. But if you wait a minute and you're still seeing lumps, so like right now, as I'm talking, it's probably been 20 seconds since I stirred it, but anyway, you'll just let it sit, and then if there's still lumps, then you'll go into the microwave for 30 seconds, stir, 30 seconds, stir, until it's completely smooth. You do want to be careful because chocolate can burn, so don't overheat it, and again, don't underestimate that internal heat. Sometimes if you just let it sit for a little bit, those bits will melt too. While I'm waiting for that to melt, I do want to quick talk to you guys about the extracts. So this is, you guys can totally just leave it like dark chocolate, but I do like to add extracts sometimes. So this is a peppermint extract. This is an almond extract, and whoops, you can use whatever you like. Coconut's great. There's like 1,000,001 extracts out there, so you could totally try a bunch of different things, or you can totally just leave it with the yummy chocolate flavor. But that's that, and you would add that at this point. Again, quantities will be down below, but you'll want to add that now. And if you want to have multiple batches or multiple flavors within one batch, I should say, you'll want to split it into a couple bowls and then stir your extracts in. Okay, so let's see if she's smoothed out now. And she's smooth. So, I will let this cool, and you guys, I'm gonna pop it into the fridge until it is firm. When you're choosing chocolate, here is my preference. So for the inside of the truffle, this is just like real chocolate, and you might say, what do you mean by real chocolate? If it says chocolate, doesn't that mean chocolate? Well, this means that there's cocoa butter in it, so it's real chocolate. The great thing is it has wonderful flavor, and it's great for the inside of the truffle. For coating the truffle, I like to use a coating chocolate, or like candy melts they're often called. That's the Wilton brand of them. And these are not real chocolate. They have vegetable oil or vegetable shortening in them instead of cocoa butter. But the nice thing is you don't have to use a process called tempering to make it get that nice hard shell. And you guys can look up videos on how to temper chocolate if you want to dip it in real chocolate. But I think this is a great shortcut. So for the centers, for the ganache, I'm using real chocolate with cocoa butter, and you guys can just read the ingredients to find this out. And then for the exterior, I use a candy melt or a coating chocolate, and I don't have a package for that one, but I do for this one. So this is like an example of candy melts, just a coating chocolate. So while the ganache is setting up, I just want to quick go over the supplies that I'm using, because I really do think these little things make a big difference. So first of all, I have a pan lined with parchment, nothing crazy there. And then you guys, I have a scoop. Now this one is actually a baby scoop, so it's smaller than the cookie ones. And you guys, with all these supplies, you can totally make do with other stuff, but I will say this makes such a difference when you can like scrape into your ganache and get it leveled off and then scoop it. Everything is even, and then you're also able to use that scoop to round it off. And then the one supply that makes a big difference, and that is food safe gloves. You guys, rolling these truffles can get so messy, and it's not always so much about the mess factor, but that our hands are putting off heat, and then it's melting the truffles, and then it gets messier and messier and messier. So I really think having gloves is a great like sanity saver, and I also think, yeah, it's just gonna make it work better, the whole process. So anyway, as I work with them today, I will be using gloves. You could totally get by without gloves, but I'll drop the link to the Amazon purchase I made to pick these up. Again, it might make your Christmas truffles that much like more manageable. Some of my set ganache, and what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna grab my scoop and I'm gonna scoop these balls out, and I'm just gonna place them onto this sheet of parchment here. So I'm gonna start doing that, and again, the nice thing with this scooper is I can fill it up completely, and then I'll just drop it onto the parchment, and first truffles on its way. So now you guys, these are scooped and they're very like messy right now, but what I'll do is I'll pop them in the fridge or the freezer. So if you pop them in the fridge, like 5 to 10 minutes, if you pop them in the freezer, just a few minutes, and we're just gonna let them get all tacky on the outside before we actually try to roll them. If you roll them right now, you're gonna have a big mess on your hands, and that's kind of one of my big secrets is to work with them until they get soft, and then they go back in the fridge. So anyway, these are gonna go in whatever, fridge or freezer, and then we'll be back here to actually start rolling. They're back out of the freezer, and you guys, I did put them in the freezer. If you do that, be careful, because then they can get kind of too hard, which I mean, you'll just have to leave them set out if you do that. So now it's time to roll them, and you guys, sometimes you can do this in one go, and sometimes this takes multiple goes, and here's what I mean. So let's just do one, and then I'll explain what I mean. So again, I'm all gloved up with food safe gloves, and then I'm taking one of my truffles, and I'm just gonna give it a roll and start to smooth it out. And I'm gonna stop there and kind of push in some of these parts that are sticking out. Okay, and it's looking pretty good. And I'll move on to my next one. Now you guys can see this one is kind of like messed up, so sometimes I'll just kind of smush the parts that are messed up, they're not very round, in before I try to roll it. And then once I've got it going, then I'll give it a roll, and that looks good. They don't have to be perfect, but they definitely, if they're like pretty close to a perfect ball shape, they're gonna be a lot easier. So again, I like to push in kind of the big parts that are sticking out and then give it a roll. And you guys, gloves are like a game changer as far as like hand heat and just not being messy. So again, I'm pushing in the bits that are sticking out, kind of pushing it together, and then I'm going into the roll, and there's that. Now you guys, these are rounding up pretty nicely. Sometimes if they start to get too soft, then I'll go back in the fridge, bring them out, roll them again, and just continue that until I make it all the way through. Although if you don't have gloves, you'll probably more than likely need to do that just a little bit more. But if you have gloves, I think you can usually do it in one go. Anyway, so I'll roll all of these smooth, and then we'll move on to dipping. Before I show you how to dip truffles, I want to show you that you don't actually have to dip them. You can coat them in cocoa powder. So you kind of have to like chocolate to have this kind. These are actually my favorite. I love these ones. But obviously this is unsweetened cocoa powder, so it's going to be a little bit bitter. Again, if you really like chocolate, they're perfect. So anyway, taking a little bit of cocoa powder, I'm not measuring it. I take a truffle, and it is an uncoated truffle, and I'll just roll it. I'll get it up here so you guys can see it. Just gonna roll it in the cocoa powder, and there it is. These, you guys, yeah, if you like chocolate, these are tasty. And the one thing I will say about these is they must be refrigerated. The other truffles can be left at room temperature, but these ones, since there's no like coating holding them together, this is just like more of a dusting, you do need to refrigerate these. By the way, this these truffles were in the freezer and I just am pulling them out and rolling them straight away. These are just truffle centers that I froze. So if you want to make these ahead of time and dip them later or roll them later, that will work as well. Now it's time to dip these truffles. To lower them into the chocolate, you can either use a fork or this is like a special truffle dipper. Either one will work. All you're going to do is plop it on the fork or the truffle dipper, lower into the chocolate until it's submerged and covered. Give it a shake on the side, and that's that. A lot of times when your candy melts cool off after the first go and you try to warm them up again, if it thickens up, then it will stay kind of thick. It doesn't thin back out to a really beautiful texture. So what you need to do is you need to add about a teaspoon of vegetable oil, and this really will make all the difference. If you're dipping those truffles in and it gets like thicker and gloppier, heat it up a little bit and add some oil. You will totally be saved. So once you dip them, they're gonna set up pretty fast because those centers are really cold and those candy melts react to that cold. So yeah, less than a minute, they should be set up. Now, personally, like I will end up with a little bit of like extra usually around there, and I'll just come in and just break that off. I don't get too worried about it, but I do like them to be as neat as possible. Hey, don't forget to subscribe, you guys. This is actually the first video in a series of truffle content, so subscribe and stay tuned for my next video on truffles. Okay, so I have some water heating up in the microwave and I'm going to be working on the drizzle now. You can always just take your melted white chocolate and transfer it into a piping bag, which is totally fine. Sometimes it can get a little messy. That's one option, and then I'll show you another option. The other way to do it is if you have some candy melts. This is just like a little bit of a cleaner way to do it, is to take your piping bag and then some candy melts. And you guys, for a drizzle, you really don't need that many, so I'll just throw maybe like a quarter or a third cup of candy melts down here. And I will then kind of hold the bag up and I'm gonna stick it into this warm water. Now you guys wouldn't wanna stick this into like boiling water. I microwave this for like a minute, so it's pretty warm, but obviously if it's too hot, it's gonna melt the bag. And I'm just using a spoon, I didn't explain. I'm using a spoon to kind of keep the candy under the water so the bag doesn't float it to the top. And then I'll just let this sit for a minute and come back. And one final check on the red candy melts, and they are melted. So I'll just give them one last little massage, get any lumps out of there, and this will be ready to go. You just want to be careful to dry this off now so you're not getting water in your chocolate when you cut your bag. To drizzle the chocolate, all you're going to do is snip a corner off the bag and move the piping bag back and forth while applying pressure till it's covered. The way we're going to do this last part is I'm just going to do like rapid fire decorating ideas, and hopefully you can draw some inspiration from it. I know we're all finding like different sprinkles and different stuff where we live. So anyway, here are some ways you can decorate your truffles. You could do a chocolate truffle with a white drizzle. Look here, I did a chocolate on chocolate drizzle, but you could do any color on any color. It kind of creates a fun look. A two-tone drizzle, you could do like here I did white and red. You can always do something like this, like a drizzle with sprinkles. This is probably the one I use the most. You could do a white on white with these gold sprinkles. Again, sprinkles will just like be what you can get, but anyway, it's a really quick way to dress them up. Look at these little gingerbread sprinkles, super cute. You can also add like edible or like natural ingredients. So like you could add, here's an almond, a sliced almond that I put on top of a truffle. You could put toasted coconut, you could put chopped pecans. They just have to be pretty fine. This is a fun one, edible gold leaf. You guys, I get this on Amazon and it's really not that expensive, but it is super cute. So there are some rapid fire ideas for you.